Hello, everyone. Welcome to Joy Workout number 47. I'm so excited to be here today. I want to talk about spirituality today, and I want to talk about where does your magnificence come from? Where does your magnificence come from? If you want a reference for any of this, we're going to have a bigger opening to this conversation soon because I'm working on a book for it. But in the 12 Practices ebook, it's in this section called Meetings and Spirituality, because joy-based living is an inclusive community, which means we don't care if you're religious or non-religious or whatever, or atheist or recovering or whatever you are. And I think that's really, really, really important to have as a foundation for a community like ours. And remembering that we have the Sanctuary book, which has a lot to do with how we have learned to withhold our magnificence. We learn to withhold our true selves. We learn to hold back our power. That's at the heart of trauma, right? What you think, what you feel, what you need doesn't account for much, and that is the trauma. There's the Sanctuary book, right? I'm going to put these pieces together here. You ready? So we have the Sanctuary book. We have a conversation about spirituality and inclusiveness. When people heal from holding their true self back and they start opening, they start rising up the ladder from fear, maybe anger comes up, maybe resentment comes up, maybe then pride comes up and arrogance comes up. I had an amazing conversation last night with someone who takes a lot of pride in being very strong in the world and helping her family to be really strong in the world, but at the expense of spirituality. And that's the flip side of all this. And the insight that came to me last night that I'm hoping will help open doors in your mind for honoring the amazing, ecstatic magnificence of your being is to ask yourself the question, where does my magnificence come from? And if you don't think you're magnificent, if you don't think you're crap or anything, there's something in your life that you do love. So let's say I have a friend who loves trees, right? Where does the magnificence in the trees come from? So if you're not thinking about you, think about someone you love. A lot of people think that way without trying to, toward infants. Like, where does the magnificence in an infant come from, or in a puppy? Um, And what's important here is to be able to, the important piece here is to recognize I might not know where it comes from, but wherever it comes from is bigger than me. It's bigger than me, and I can't take credit for it. I can't take credit for the magnificence in that beautiful, stunning red cardinal in my bamboo grove that's sitting on the ground right there, right now. I can't take credit for that. That's a stunning photograph in my mind right now. I can't take credit for that. And in our world that is hyper intellectual and hyper scientific, we become very heady. We become very prideful. We become very arrogant. And we can't experience the true sense of our magnificence and spirituality at the same time as trying to take credit for anything or trying to figure it out. I have one friend who says all the time, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. I'm like, okay, that's one side. That figuring out stuff will help you out of trauma and crap like that. But the magic of life and the magnificence of life, especially for someone who knows love, who knows the power of love, who knows the power of beauty, who knows joy, For a person like that to say, well, I don't know that I can trust the larger field of life, I'm looking for gateways in to help unleash that in you, to unleash that freedom, because there's no figuring out in it. There's no, you don't have the luxury of using your brain. That's like using a knife to try to sew. You can use a knife for a lot of things, but you can't use it to sew fabric. It's going to cut everything up. And so I associate like that knife with the more masculine part of my being. And I associate the sewing of fabric, which, if you think about it energetically, the sense of there's something hugely magnificent in this world and it made me. That fills me, that without using a needle necessarily, that is a sewing, it's an infusion, it's a basking. And that is, when I think of the biblical story of Joseph and the coat of many colors, it feels like a coat. It feels like a wrap around. It feels like a sense of safety. And to walk in the world in your power, you want to have a feeling of safety inside of you, a feeling of security that comes from something much bigger. Because if you're only relying on yourself, you're going to feel like you need, like, you're going to feel vulnerable in a way that you don't need to feel vulnerable. You're going to feel afraid in a way that you don't need to feel afraid. And when you're on this other side, which defies logic, it defies reason, people who a lot of times are recovering from whatever religion they grew up in because it was used abusively on them, a lot of times they carry with them the sense of reverence that they learned in whatever church or whatever that they went to, but then they throw it out like when they used to say, you threw the baby out with the bathwater. I want you to take that back. And if you never had it before, I want you to be so curious about it. I want you to ask yourself the question, where does my magnificence come from? Where does magnificence in the world come from? I'll end with this one story. So a long time ago, I used to teach these classes on manifesting. It was really, really, really fun, really fun. And I had this one guy who was a fitness guy who had a degree in science. And I was teaching a private class to a group of fitness professionals, and he hadn't signed up yet, and he called me up and he said, I have a question for you. I don't know if this class is right for me. Do I need to be spiritual? Do I need to be religious? I can't do that. And I'm like, no. And so we had this like amazing conversation, and I said to him, where does the energy come from? Like, to make the grass grow? And he's like, oh, from the soil and the water and da da da. And I said, okay, well, where does that energy come from? Where does it come from? You as a human being, where does that come from? You're a smart person. And he said, well, I kind of see the universe as like, there's like this big vat of energy, and we each get a ladle full. And I said, well, there you have it. That's good enough. Like as long as you can acknowledge that there's this big vat of energy, there's this big vat of infinite possibilities, there's this big vat of mystery, and it's made of intelligence and love. It's made of something that creates order in the universe. Then you're part of it, and you get a portion of that. Now you have access to something bigger that does not make intellectual sense. And leaning into that isn't just the opposite of trauma, it's the freedom of your true self. And when you are in cahoots with the freedom of your true self, you will transcend all the traumas. And then if they come up again, or as they come up again, you just transcend again, because now you're leaning into something much bigger that is constantly caring for you. And I think that's a good place to close. So just the joy workout for today is, where does your magnificence come from? And not to try to answer that question. Your intellect is going to want to answer it, but to let your mind and your body, because you are made of you're made of all kinds of things, right? You have a body that you're with every day. to let your body feel that question. Where does your magnificence come from? Where does it come from? Like the way like a kid will wonder, where does it come from? Where did and why and what? Like let that wondering be part of your inner experience. Let that innocence of that wondering be part of that experience. That is a huge, 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 huge component of joy, of daily joy. And in today's modern world, we have that luxury. We have that luxury, so use it. Use that luxury to your advantage. Take full advantage of it. Milk that cow. Milk that cow. So, where does your magnificence come from? Thank you so much for being with me here in this conversation on this journey. Thank you for growing with me. We're in this together. I appreciate you so much. See you for tomorrow's workout. Bye for now.